All right, let's do it. Today, we're diving deep into the mind of Elon Musk and how his strategies connect to the ideas in Freakonomics. I've got our notes on Musk here ready to go, and of course, we've got Freakonomics by Stephen D. Levitt and journalist Stephen J. Dubner.
You know, it's interesting because most people see Elon Musk as this tech visionary. Like he's kind of this real-life Tony Stark, but they don't often look at him through an economist lens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's where Freakonomics comes in, because it's not like reading a regular economics textbook.
Right.
It's more like a detective story, where they're using data to uncover these surprising truths about, well, pretty much everything, like crime or even parenting.
Exactly. It's like, why do drug dealers often live with their mothers? Freakonomics dives into questions like that.
Yeah.
And a big thing in the book is this idea of incentives and how they could really shape behavior in ways we don't always see coming.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see how Elon Musk, while not a politician, has become pretty good at using these incentives to kind of push his agenda.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at things like sustainable energy and space exploration.
Absolutely.
So one of the big takeaways from Freakonomics is that things aren't always what they seem on the surface.
Right.
Do you remember that study they did linking legalized abortion and crime rates?
Yeah, and that's a really good example because, of course, we're not here to take sides or anything.
Of course not.
But it just shows how this book can really dig deep into these complex issues that are sometimes even controversial to try and find hidden patterns and explanations.
Okay, so where does Elon Musk fit into all of this?
Well,
He's not exactly out there crunching crime statistics.
true, but he does challenge norms, like those Freakonomics examples. He sets these really ambitious goals, like colonizing Mars, which is a big one, and then leverages incentives to try to actually achieve them. Look at Tesla, for example. I mean, before them, electric cars were just seen as, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not very cool.
Kind of lame, yeah.
Yeah, kind of lame. But then Musk changed everything.
He definitely made them cool. But how is that Freakonomics in action?
Well, it all goes back to understanding what motivates people, those incentives. Musk knew that to get people excited about electric vehicles, he had to change the whole perception. So instead of focusing on just practicality, he focused on making Teslas high performance and really desirable. So he was tapping into that human desire for something stylish.
Well,
powerful.
He was selling an image, right? Almost like a status symbol.
Yes, exactly.
And that really shifted things.
Yeah, and it kind of created this halo effect that boosted demand for all electric vehicles, not just Teslas.
Interesting.
And that's where things get really Freakonomics-y, you know? That increased demand then pushed governments to start incentivizing electric car adoption even further, like through tax breaks, rebates, and even investing in better infrastructure for charging stations.
So it's like Musk started this chain reaction.
Yes.
First with the consumers, and then with policymakers.
Right.
And it's all because he knew how to incentivize the change that he wanted to see.
Exactly. And remember, it wasn't just about building a better product. I mean, Musk really tackled one of the biggest anxieties people have about electric cars: range anxiety.
Yeah.
So he goes and creates this huge network of these supercharger stations.
Right.
So now, traveling long distances in a Tesla, well, it's not just possible, it's convenient.
You remove the obstacle, and in doing so, he created another big incentive to buy electric. It's like he's thinking so many steps ahead.
Well, he's got that long-term vision, and combining that with his understanding of incentives, it's really Freakonomics at its best. But we can't forget about SpaceX. I mean, they've really disrupted the entire space industry, again, by focusing on incentives.
Okay, so we know Musk wants to colonize Mars, which is a pretty big incentive for some people just on its own. But how else is SpaceX using that Freakonomics style of thinking?
Well, Musk realized that if he actually wants to do something as crazy as colonizing Mars, space travel has to become way more affordable and accessible. So he focused on reusable rockets, a concept that was pretty out there at the time.
Reusable rockets. How did that change things?
Well, think about it. Traditionally, rockets were one use only and incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
But by developing reusable rockets, SpaceX could drastically reduce launch costs. And this made space travel much more financially viable for pretty much everyone, not just governments with tons of money to spend.
So that was a big shift. Now, space exploration becomes much more attainable, which then attracts more investment, more talented people want to get involved, and it just fuels innovation.
Exactly. And remember, Freakonomics is all about challenging assumptions, finding hidden connections. Well, Musk's unique approach to space travel, it opened up all these new opportunities to collaborate with government agencies like NASA. And those partnerships gave SpaceX even more funding and resources.
So he's using incentives on all these different levels,
Hmm.
attracting brilliant engineers with that ambitious vision, driving down costs with reusable rockets, and then partnering with governments for more funding and resources. It's like this self-perpetuating cycle.
It really is. Each success opens up new opportunities, and that's where Musk's strategies align perfectly with the ideas from Freakonomics. He's not just building companies, he's reshaping entire industries because he gets how human behavior works. Then he takes all that and he uses it to benefit his vision.
Okay, so we've talked about Tesla and SpaceX, but what about some of his other ventures, like Neuralink? Does that fit into the Freakonomics framework too?
Oh, absolutely. Neuralink and its goal of developing brain-machine interfaces, it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but at its heart, it's still about understanding those incentives.
Okay.
See, Musk is tackling what he sees as a huge limitation, the limits of our own brains. And his solution...
Merge with technology.
Merge them with technology, exactly.
That's a bold solution, but how do you incentivize people to even work on something so complex and risky?
Well, think about the kind of people who are drawn to a company like Neuralink. These are some of the most brilliant minds out there, top scientists, engineers, and they are driven by the challenge, the potential to be part of something that's truly groundbreaking.
So the incentive is almost the pursuit of knowledge itself.
Yeah.
This chance to push the boundaries of what humans are capable of.
Yes.
Less about money, more about making a real impact.
You got it. And this ties right back into that Freakonomics emphasis on understanding the why behind human behavior. Musk knows how to tap into those motivations, whether it's wanting a status symbol like a Tesla, the urge to explore space like with SpaceX, or the drive to make humans even smarter like with Neuralink.
This is fascinating, but how does Musk pull this off again and again? I mean, is it just that he's a brilliant entrepreneur?
It's more than that, I think. What really sets him apart is his knack for leveraging something called information asymmetry. So he positions himself as this thought leader in these cutting-edge fields and uses his platform to shape public perception and even influence policy.
Okay, hold on. Information asymmetry. What exactly does that mean?
Sure, let me break it down. Think about buying a used car. The seller, they probably know a lot more about the car's history, its problems, than you do, right?
Yeah.
That's information asymmetry. One side has way more knowledge than the other.
Got it. So how does Musk use that to his advantage?
He's always learning about these complex topics, sustainable energy, space travel, AI, and then he shares that knowledge with the public. This makes him look like the expert, someone you can trust to guide us through all this new territory.
So he's not just building companies, he's building a brand that revolves around knowledge and innovation. And that becomes really powerful when it comes to influencing decisions and creating change.
Exactly. It's a brilliant strategy, and again, it lines up perfectly with Freakonomics. You understand how information flows, you position yourself within that flow, and that gives you a serious advantage.
Wow, this is getting pretty deep. We've seen how Musk uses incentives to shake up entire industries, influence government policy, and even recruit the best talent. But what about the bigger picture? Where does all this disruption actually lead us?
That's the big question, and that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to look at the possible consequences of Musk's actions, both good and bad, and what his vision really means for the future of humanity.
Stay tuned. This conversation is just getting started. We'll be back after a quick.
It's fascinating when you think about all these pieces of Musk's strategy, the technology, the image, even the way he influences policy. It all kind of comes together like one big Freakonomics puzzle.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't enough to just make a better electric car.
Right.
He had to build this whole ecosystem around it to make it irresistible.
That's where his understanding of how people think really comes in. Freakonomics shows us that people are going to respond to incentives.
Right.
But it's not always about money.
Right.
Sometimes it's about status.
Yeah.
Or convenience, or even just feeling like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
So he tapped into that desire to be on the cutting edge, to be seen as someone who gets it.
Yes.
And that's how he made Tesla owners. It's almost like they became these evangelists for the brand.
Exactly. I mean, they become these walking, talking advertisements for electric vehicles, and they start influencing their friends, their families,
Yeah.
and even policymakers.
Yeah.
Remember that study in Freakonomics about how social norms can sometimes be way more powerful than actual laws?
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's like Musk created a whole new social norm around electric car ownership.
Yeah, he made it cool to care about the environment.
He did.
Which is actually pretty impressive.
Okay.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second and talk about SpaceX. How does what they're doing relate to that idea of information asymmetry we were talking about?
Well, think about it. With SpaceX, Musk took a field that used to be super secretive, the world of government and military space programs.
Right.
And he opened it up. He made it way more transparent and accessible to the public.
He kind of demystified it, right?
Exactly. And it helps that he's got such a big personality, I mean, he's launching rockets into space, but he's also hosting Saturday Night Live. He's tweeting memes. He's really breaking down those walls between, like, the super smart scientists and the rest of us. And by sharing his knowledge and that passion that he has for space, he's capturing the public's imagination in a way that NASA just hasn't been able to do in decades.
He made space cool again.
He did.
And that then brings in more support for space exploration, more money for research.
Right.
And it just opens up more opportunities for people to innovate.
It's like a real-world example of that broken windows theory from Freakonomics, By fixing those so-called broken windows, things like the lack of public interest, the incredibly high cost of space travel, that perception that space was only for a special few, well, Musk created an environment where innovation could actually thrive.
That's a great way to look at it. Okay, so we've seen how he's using these Freakonomics principles in his own businesses, but does that influence extend beyond that?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the key takeaways from Freakonomics is that understanding incentives can be applied to pretty much any problem. It doesn't have to be just about economics. And Musk seems to get that, like, intuitively. He's using those same principles to go after some of the biggest challenges we're facing, like climate change and the possibility that AI could get out of control.
Are you talking about Neuralink again?
Yeah.
The whole brain-computer interface thing?
Yeah.
That still sounds like something straight out of a movie to me.
I know. It's definitely on the cutting edge, but that's what Freakonomics is all about.
Yeah.
Challenging conventional thinking.
Yeah.
And Musk is basically saying, if we want to keep up with AI, maybe we need to upgrade our own brains.
It's like he's trying to hack human evolution.
Kind of, yeah.
Using a Freakonomics cheat code. But how do you convince people to let you, mess with their brains?
Well, it goes back to incentives. Neuralink isn't just about making us smarter or more efficient.
Okay.
Musk is presenting it as a way to solve some of the biggest medical challenges we face, like how do we treat neurological disorders, paralysis, even blindness.
So the incentive is the potential for healing.
Yeah.
The chance to regain something that was lost.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual patients. Musk argues that if we can somehow merge our minds with AI, we can actually control its development better and make sure it's used to help people, not hurt them.
Well, yeah, that's a big idea.
It is.
Makes you wonder, is Musk just a really brilliant entrepreneur? Or is he something more than that?
Yeah.
Is he trying to steer humanity in a very specific direction using these Freakonomics-style strategies?
That's a tough question. I mean, it's clear he's got a vision for the future, one that's shaped by his understanding of technology, economics, and how people behave.
Yeah.
But is he a hero or a villain?
Right.
I think that's up to each individual to decide.
That's a good point. It's just like Freakonomics teaches us.
Yeah.
There's always more than one way to see a problem, and there's always something more to the story than what's on the surface.
Right. And that's why it's so important to think critically about the information we're given.
Yeah.
Don't just accept everything at face value. Yeah. Question things.
Right.
Be open to different points of view, just like Levitt and Dubner tell us to do in Freakonomics.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
We have.
We've seen how Musk's strategies connect to Freakonomics.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for everyday people? How does this affect our lives?
That's a great question, and it's something that we're going to dive into in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to look at some of the potential consequences of Musk's actions, both the positive and the negative.
Right.
And we'll talk about what his vision of the future really means for all of us.
So what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with from this part of the conversation?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Incentives matter a lot.
Yeah.
They shape the choices that we make, how we behave, and ultimately how our world looks.
That's true.
And if we can understand how they work, those incentives, we can understand how the world works.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, we can make it a better place.
Sounds like something straight out of Freakonomics.
It does.
And on that note, we'll be right back after. Welcome back to the show. We've been looking at Elon Musk through this Freakonomics lens, but now for the big question. What does it all mean for the rest of us?
It's like Musk is running this giant Freakonomics experiment in the real world, and we're all part of it.
Yeah.
We've seen how he shakes things up, all this innovation, but it's hard to say what the long-term consequences will be.
Okay, so let's play what if. What if Musk actually pulls off those big, crazy goals that he keeps talking about? What does that world look like?
Well, imagine a world where we're all using sustainable energy, where electric cars are everywhere, and solar panels are powering our homes.
Right.
That's the future that Musk is trying to build with Tesla.
Yeah.
And if he succeeds, it could make a huge difference when it comes to climate change.
That's the optimistic view, I guess.
Yeah.
But Freakonomics also teaches us to look out for those unintended consequences.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. Remember that whole chapter about how car seats might not be as safe as we think?
Yeah, I remember that.
Sometimes the solutions we come up with end up creating new problems that we never even thought about.
So what could go wrong with Musk's big plans?
Well, one thing is accessibility.
Yeah.
Even with all the progress Tesla has made, those cars are still really expensive.
Right.
Way more than most gas-powered cars. What happens to the people who just can't afford to buy one?
Yeah, it could create a divide.
Yeah.
The people who can afford the latest and greatest tech benefit, everyone else gets left behind.
Exactly. And then there's the question of who controls these technologies. As companies like Tesla and SpaceX get bigger and more powerful, how do we make sure they're doing what's best for everyone?
That's a really important point. Freakonomics reminds us that incentives can be powerful.
Yeah.
But they can also be manipulated.
They can. Think about the housing crisis back in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
That was partly because of all these messed up incentives in the mortgage industry. We have to make sure the incentives driving this new technology are actually good for everyone.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we make sure that Musk's Freakonomics experiment actually works out for everyone, not just a few lucky people?
Well, we need to stay informed. That's a big one.
Yeah.
We need to understand what these technologies can do, the
Yeah.
good and the bad.
Right.
And we need to have these open and honest conversations about what kind of future we want to build.
Freakonomics reminds us that knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about how things work,
Right.
the better choices we can make.
Exactly. And we can't be afraid to challenge the status quo, to ask the tough questions, just like the authors of Freakonomics did.
Yeah.
We've got to be willing to look beyond what's right in front of us, to really understand the things that are shaping our world.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is.
Can regular people actually do anything to change all of this?
Absolutely. Every single one of us has a role to play. We can support companies and initiatives that match our values.
Yeah.
We can fight for policies that promote sustainability and fairness. And we can learn more about the challenges ahead and help others understand them too.
It's almost like a collective Freakonomics project.
Yeah.
We all have our own motivations and goals.
We do.
But if we can work together, we might be able to make the world a better place.
Exactly. And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe by using those same Freakonomics principles, we can come up with some solutions that even Elon Musk hasn't thought of yet.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this one thought. Don't underestimate your own ability to influence the future.
I agree.
Be curious, think critically about the world, and get involved. The world is full of hidden incentives, just waiting to be discovered and used for good.
And if you really want to understand how these incentives work, you have to check out Freakonomics. It's a really fun read. It'll make you think about things in a different way.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explore the world of Elon Musk and the fascinating lessons of Freakonomics. We'll be back next week with another deep dive, so until then, keep exploring.